Today I'm talking about whether or not you can swap out cymbals from other brands like Kat Percussion with Roland drum modules or Roland Cymbals with Kat Percussion drum modules. That's coming up. What's up guys, Justin Grunewald here, welcome 65 Drums. This is the place to keep on top of all things Edrum related, so consider subscribing if you haven't yet. So back when I bought my Kat Percussion KT4, I got a lot of questions, people asking, hey, can you use Kat Percussion cymbals with Roland drum modules? And then other people want to know, like, can you get Roland cymbals to work with Kat Percussion drum modules? So all morning I've been experimenting, and I'm just going to go over the results I've had with each one of those drum modules and all the pads I've been testing. One of the first things I tested were hi-hats. I wanted to see if I could get a Roland VH11 to work on a Kat Percussion KT4 drum module. The reason why I thought it might not is because the Kat Percussion KT4 hi-hat controller, that's this sensor that sits underneath the cymbal, so when you press down on the hi-hat, it goes like that, and this little lever gets pushed down. The Kat Percussion controller piece actually has a power plug on it, so you have to plug it into the wall, which is incredibly annoying. And then there's an on-off switch, so when you turn off your drum module after you're done playing, you got to remember to reach underneath your hi-hat and turn off the controller piece. I wanted to see, well, like, would this work? And the answer is, it actually does. The next thing I tried was this Gooey Dream hi-hat controller piece. This is like the budget version of this. This isn't quite as well made. It's got lower grade materials and yada yada yada, but it is definitely an option. A lot of people have bought this hi-hat controller piece because of how cheap it is. Like a whole VH11 setup is like 400 bucks or 300 bucks on eBay right now. And this is like way under 100 bucks, and then use whatever cymbal you want with it. And after testing the Gooey Dream hi-hat controller with the KT4, I found out it works too. And when I compared the performance of using the actual controller piece that comes with the drum set versus that Roland one and the Gooey Dream one, I didn't really see a big increase on how well it controls the hi-hat. The Kat Percussion KT4 is the best sounding in price, but there are some dynamic things, like when you almost close the hi-hat to the point where you actually close the hi-hat, there's a little drop off right there, and stuff like that doesn't usually happen in a Yamaha drum module. I don't want to judge too hard though, because I haven't installed any updates from a computer. There might be a firmware update that solves those dynamic issues. Well, the next thing I tried was using a CY12 Roland crash cymbal with the Kat Percussion KT4, and I found out it triggers great. Let's move over to the Roland TD30. I tested out the ride cymbal of the Kat Percussion drum module and found that, unfortunately, since it only has one port on it, it won't give you all three zones. You get all three zones, but two of the sounds are the same. So when you hit the Kat Percussion ride cymbal, when you're using a Roland TD30 drum module, you'll hear the bell sound on the bell and the edge, and you'll hear the bow zone where it's supposed to be, but you'll get a bell sound here and here. It's just a compatibility thing that happens when you use two brands that aren't really meant to work together with each other. A Roland cymbal actually has two inputs on the back. You have one input right here for bow and bell, and the other inputs for bow and edge. So right there you can see that a Roland ride cymbal and a Kat Percussion ride cymbal can't really be compatible because one uses two inputs and one only uses one input. I tried to trick the Roland drum module. This is what I did. I took the Kat Percussion ride cymbal. This isn't the ride cymbal, but I took this cable, it's stereo on one end. I plug that in, and then the other end is 2 mono outs. So I was thinking to myself, okay, well, what if I just plug this into 2 inputs on the Roland module? Unfortunately, that didn't work. But if you do want to use a cat percussion cymbal with a Roland drum module as a ride cymbal, it does work. You'll just get 2 bell zones and 1 bow zone. Here's the thing, whenever you use pads from different manufacturers that aren't designed to work together, then you're gonna have some compatibility issues. Now, I did try that cat percussion hi-hat cymbal as a crash on my Roland drum set using CY12C settings inside of the trigger. Now, I had to crank up the rim edge sensor and the sensitivity of that cymbal as well. I had to do that with the ride cymbal because it was a little bit too quiet. Now, the bell on that hi-hat was actually triggering the edge sound of the crash cymbal. It was really funny because I was doing the cymbal swell on the bell of the pad instead of the edge. You're probably wondering why in the world I didn't just use a cat percussion crash cymbal and try that out on my Roland TD30. The reason why is I bought that cat percussion KT4 as a floor model as is demo unit. So they said, we tried it and we think it works, and it really didn't. 2 of the crash cymbals were they're broke. And then the hi-hat was actually split in half. I had to glue the hi-hat pad back together with Gorilla Glue, and for right now, it's holding. Fingers crossed. The ride cymbal was the only thing that escaped intact as far as the cymbal pads go. I'm still struggling on whether or not I wish I'd spent the money on this drum set, but I got my money's worth because the module alone was $500 and I bought it on eBay, the whole thing with all the pads for $500. So unfortunately, I couldn't test one of their crash cymbals with that Roland drum module, so I had the hi-hat pad as a stand-in. Now, last thing I tested was using the hi-hat pad as a hi-hat. I wanted to see if it would work in place of a VH11. And yes, it actually did work really, really well. Now, I'm just gonna play an example of me using the hi-hat pad from Kat and the cat percussion 3-zone ride cymbal they have. And this is how they work in conjunction with a Roland TD30. Some people were wondering if the cat percussion KT4 could use Roland mesh pads or whatever brand you want to use. And the answer is yes, they do work. And I'm actually going to be using the KT4 with TD30K pads, including the kick drum, the snare, and the toms. So it's a fun setup to play. It's a big improvement over using the rubber pads. I feel like the entire Edrum industry needs to give up on these. They were great back in the day, but I feel like we should move on to all mesh pads or all like silicone pads, like what Yamaha uses. Because those 2 different types, the silicone and the mesh pads, those are just like the superior playing surfaces. And I feel like everyone should migrate to using those just only. Like, forget rubber pads entirely. I know some of you guys have a Frankenstein drum set where you're using some pads from Roland, some pads from Yamaha, some pads from Alesis. If you've got a drum set using different pads from different manufacturers, let me know your setup down in the comments below and how well they work together. Are they completely compatible, or are you missing a zone or two with certain pads? Let me know. I'm really interested to find out. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. See you in a few.